So the agenda for today. First, I want to introduce Chris Clark. Um, Chris, so one of the things that the board voted on was to provide some funding for the Linux Foundation to do some help with meeting organization and things like that. So it'll probably be what's Tom more often?
Yeah, Tom Slander will typically be helping out on this
Yeah.
call. I'll join too when I'm available. Tom's out this whole week though. He's out sick. So I'm just sort of filling in to get things started and observe and see exactly what is needed from us. But and some of you might know me if you join the TAC calls or things like that. So sorry. I'm program manager at the LF, and I'm the primary PM on HPSF. Hopefully, some of you will see me in Chicago in a couple weeks. Um, yeah, so this is the first project under HPSF that has asked for additional support. And so Tom and I will be helping out basically just with TSC and board meetings, and maybe other things as needed, with note taking and action items, following up, sending out reminders, things like that. But generally, I think on this call going forward, it'll be Tom, but we'll see. It'll be one of us.
Cool. And I've been talking to both Chris and Tom about a lot of things. They helped us form, they helped us get everything in order so that we could join HPSF. Uh, I think the world of you guys. So I'm glad you guys can come and help.
Thanks, Alex. Yeah, it's good to be here. And openCHAMI is kind of, it seems like there's a lot of momentum and a lot of interest from some key players in the industry. So it's an exciting project.
Cool. So the other things that we have on our standing agenda, which I sort of filled out here, are architectural discussions and community ecosystem growth strategies. I kind of left out the key milestones and technical debt, emerging issues. We can cover those in additional business if needed, but I kind of left those alone. Um, so, and obviously we can take things from the floor. I'd like to move this back to front. So the we've typically been to talk about the board meetings. Um, the reason so the board, what they do is they do things like say yes to money. They also talk about membership. We can't expand the TSC without their help. Well, I think actually technically we can, but we shouldn't do that because we want the board to be involved in all of the pieces. So we typically have been doing one board meeting at ISC and one at SC. I think there's enough people not going to ISC this year that we enough people not going to ISC this year that we probably should skip the ISC board meeting and instead focus on the SC board meeting, which will be our third year of existence. Um, so unless there's folks that really feel strongly in another direction, that's my goal. Which would then also mean that if that we would really like to have our board members present uh, at SC this year. Does that thing? Do you think that anyone think that'll be a problem for their organization? I've been talking to board members, and the only thing that we would want to have an ISC board meeting for would be if we wanted to add any new members. And no one that I have talked to is suggesting that there are new members that are so eager to join that they couldn't wait until November. So that would be the other thing if folks here are aware of something else.
So this is the governance board
Yeah.
meeting here. Yeah, no, I don't think that's a problem for us.
Okay. Okay. So I will probably send out a mailing to the board in the next week or so, saying that our next board meeting will be at SC, that we currently have nothing, that we will be doing a project update, but as of today, we have nothing we need the board to vote on, and see if folks change their mind. Um, Second thing on the list is HPSF Con, which is coming up in like a week and a half, 2 weeks. It's like right around the corner. We have a list of speakers that are, where to go? we have a schedule and a list of speakers. Um, I was trying to confirm with everybody that they are going to be there. As of now, the only person that we had on our original list that's not going to be there is you, Travis, and Chris is going to take over for you, which I think sounds great. So I'll be getting emails out to folks reminding them what they're in charge of. But if you have not already signed up, I think you missed the deadline for the cheaper sign up, but I think it's going to be great. I'm really looking forward to the discussions with Red Hat around a bootable container standard that will turn into our system management system image standard as well. Any questions? Cool.
Nope, looking forward to it. I agree. Should be fun.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I don't know how many people are going to be from the community are going to be coming to our community day. I think that there's some conflicts, but I do think that we're going to have a lot of the right people in the room, which makes me happy. So we'll be able to make some good decisions, and have some good discussions. I think agentic workflows, and I'll raise this in a second, but I think agents are something that we have not spent a whole lot of time working on or talking about. I think that in the time we have, I will definitely want to be talking about that with both how agents interact with openCHAMI and how we as a project want to take advantage of agents to develop the software, and how we want to put our what kinds of safeguards we want to put around that. Next, we have the May Developer Summit in the UK. I've sent out emails about this recently to the mailing list. So if you didn't get an email recently about this, let me know. Make sure we want to make sure that everybody's on the mailing list and getting these. The two big topics that have emerged from our hosts, UCL and Bristol, are building the UK and EU community for openCHAMI. There's a lot of things going on these days around sovereign AI, and like I think that it will be a stronger growth community if there's some clear UK EU leadership. I mean, I'm happy to continue to do a lot of the leadership stuff, but I think there's a limit to what a Department of Energy American can do to convince other European partners that this is actually sovereign AI for them. So looking forward to that. That's going to be one of the big talks. And then rather than focusing on development for this one, the team there wants to focus on operations. So the things that are coming together as the operations track are like how to use the APIs of OpenCHAMI to switch from Slurm to Kubernetes in like a minute and a half or something like that. How to how to run tests, how to do multiple image builds, like a lot of the things that you're going to want to run a system rather than just install it, which has been where we focused in the past. So we may not do the here's how to install OpenCHAMI tutorial that we've done so many times before. I just think that I think that the folks there are not interested in that. They believe that it will work. That what they want to know is like, how can I do things with an API? And so that's been what we've focused on. If you want to be involved in planning, there's time. We've just started our weekly calls for the May Dev Summit planning meetings. We've got a representative from Bristol and a representative from UCL and me, and we're coming together. And we're hoping to so we're hoping to get more in there. One of the things that I know I have been asked about a lot is the Day Zero event at Cambridge. Cambridge originally offered to host a Day Zero event where they would talk about how they manage their systems at Cambridge. I would really like that, but I have not been getting any responses from the folks at Cambridge, and I've been emailing everybody I know over there. So as of this point, I don't have anything to put on a schedule. If there's anybody here who knows the folks at Cambridge, like Paul and Wojciech and Dennis, I think is his name, and might be able to get them to sort of like commit to something, I would love to put it on the schedule, but we've got some folks from the Department of Energy that need to put in their travel requests. and they can't do that and include a day zero unless there's an agenda someplace. So if we don't have anything by the end of Monday, I'm probably going to pull down the day zero event. Uh, and I have sent emails to Wojciech and others about this. So I would really like to not have to do that. So if anyone can help, and I've got the organizers at Bristol and UCL also chasing this, but we're really on down to the wire on this being possible or not. Once we have that defined and we have more of a here are the speakers, here's the sessions, which should be by this time next week, we're going to send out another blast of emails and Slack messages to all of the various communities that we're part of, to say, please come and be a part of the European Community Summit, EU, UK Community Summit around operations. And here are the kinds of things we'd like to cover. So if you want to be involved, let me know, or I can direct you to the right people who are part of the organizing committee along with me. And if there's anything particularly around operations you think we should talk about at the summit, let me know. Either European community development or operations. Those are the kinds of talks that we're really hoping to invite. Okay, that's the community ecosystem and growth. Anyone have any questions or comments? Anyone want to throw anything else in there?
I have a couple questions, if you don't
Of
mind.
course.
Um, First question is, I have a working MCP server in Python that I use to target openCHAMI. It's really barebone. Are you interested, open, into me turning it into a full-fledged Golang repo? And then there's an architectural question. Do you prefer, off the top of your head, would you prefer the MCP server running on people's machines, or it running in the cluster and just contacting it like an API?
The first question, absolutely. And if you need me to create just hit me up in Slack with the name of the repo you want me to create, and I'll create it. Um, and even if it is not yet like ready for public, we can create a repo that is just for the existing contributors, and then we can open it up later.
Okay.
And we've done that with other things before. As to the second question, I think there are benefits to both options. If there's a decision that you're making that limits one versus the other, then like try not to limit it. But I don't have a strong opinion. Do other people have strong opinions?
Okay, I think by default I'll try to make a Golang container, and then we deploy it alongside the rest, and it just works.
That works.
Okay.
Just
Sorry,
real
go ahead.
quick, I know that you're not, so I don't think we've seen you at the TSC meetings before. I know who you are, but could you just briefly, like, which site are you working with? Like, give us a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, sorry about that. I work at CSCS under Mark Klein, who's here today, and I focus on deploying openCHAMI at CSCS. So I'm mostly doing packaging work currently, but then I'm trying to find ways to contribute to the upstream repos as well. And so the main thing I've been doing is packaging openCHAMI with Kia, for example, and making developer environments for internally at CSCS. And it's kind of turning into a full-fledged tool. And that leads to my second question. We don't have a central repository for deployments really, where with like well-maintained and identified like helm charts and Docker Compose and everything. Is this something you want in the project at some point, or does every site have to do their own packaging?
Sorry, Travis, were you going to say something?
Yeah, so I was going to see we actually had a centralized report and
Oh, we can't really hear you, Travis. Are you talking into a different mic?
I did not know that Sam was doing so every time like Zoom it seems like
While we wait for Travis's sound to get set up, this has been so we have not wanted to have a default openCHAMI, like here's how you deploy it, because we do know that every site is going to deploy it differently. Dell John, when Dell deploys it via as part of Omnia, like you're making choices and your deployments, like they may look a little bit like the Lanel ones, but you're not saying that you're going to stay in lockstep with what we have published as our recipe.
That's
And I
right.
think that's good. It gives you an opportunity to put some differentiation there. So the answer, Alexandre, is I think that we want to share recipes, but I don't think we want to say here is a mandatory, you must do it this way, kind of thing. And Travis, do you have sound? Can we hear you?
Yeah, it should be better
There
now.
we go. Perfect.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
You want to comment on
Defaulting
what
to-
you guys have been doing? Yeah.
Okay. Soft defaulting to the laptop microphone, which is useless. All right. So we used to have like a centralized deployment repo that had both the stuff that was pre-introduced at Lano being the quadlets and like the older Helm chart. We'd kind of moved like basically I'd created a new repo for Kubernetes deployments that was not using Helm charts, it was using Argo and Customize. That will be some of the stuff that Chris will be discussing at HSPFCon. I don't know if you will be attending that, but I think Alex, you know if that will be recorded at HSPFCon or no.
Chris, I think there's recordings, right?
The general sessions are going to be recorded. I don't know about the openCHAMI one specifically.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd have to check on that. The
Okay.
project sessions that they vary, I think, from project to project, so I'm not quite sure.
I mean, we can
Unix-
do a recording. It just may not be really high quality. It may be my
Yeah.
laptop mic,
Even if it's not recorded, but like we will have like updated like slides and like some of the
Yeah.
stuff that like basically. So I had done a presentation of this at SC. It was very brief and there was no recording. And trying to get like possible open community input onto this as a Kubernetes deployment method, didn't get any. So the Chris has been basically kind of doing kicking the tires, as doing the second person that's not the author on it, and will be kind of like presenting it as like, here is this as a local, both a Kubernetes deployment option that works locally and for a proper cluster. So that's where that is. And then as far as like any other deployment methods, we have like the centralized community repository that has like, just like kind of, blog and such, but having it so that there is if you have like wildly different deployment methods, so like there's really like nothing in common with like the quadlets and the Kubernetes stuff. Having those kind of collected in the same Kubernetes repository didn't really make a whole lot of sense, because like there wasn't really any like release commonality between them. So like the only thing that was common between them is like, go to this repository and you can see like different deployment methods, but you have to kind of like know the structures there for the difference between them. So that kind of makes sense as to why the split exists. And then I can help you find out where that stuff is presently, even prior to HSPF.
So I think, Alexandre, if you want to create a CSCS recipe repo for a deployment recipe repo and maintain that in the GitHub org, that'd be great. I don't think there's another place where you have to do it. There is a discoverability problem, because if you do that and Travis does the customized Argo stuff, like we need to figure out how new users can figure out which of the various recipes they might want to try. But I think that's a different problem than how do you store and manage your own recipe.
Yeah, but I think it's a relatively easy problem where we can basically say it like in community repos, like here is the deployment section. This is just a markdown document pointing to different repos. These are the free repos, what their status is sort of like official or unofficial. So that seems like a very reasonable thing to do.
Is there an easy way to find the latest tagged versions of all those services?
Well,
so if you go to the release repo, I put a little thing in the README there that includes the automatic like tagged release of all of the containers that I was aware of that were in the release repo at the time. We may need to update that, but that'll always have the most recent release of every container.
Yeah,
That's a manual process.
Pardon?
Is that a manual process?
It's a manual process to add a container. It's not a manual process to update the release. That happens automatically.
Okay, thanks.
And I don't know about others, but I actually generally prefer the version of like releases where you know like the releases for like power control and SMD, like SMD and so on, have their, or not SMD, inventory management, have their own like our individual repos, and have like, you know, the standard kind of like GitHub release information where it's like, you know, this is a release of this project and it's only this service. I also know that there are projects that do like, you know, mono repos and have like, you know, 5 different releases of different project all going in within the same repo, and those are much harder to navigate. Like having a single repo that has just releases of like, you know, one major service that's in it. Those are usually a bit easier and then like can be linked from a central location, but like navigating, like, you know, if I just want to go, if I'm curious about like what is the current release of like the power control service, and I go to the power control service repo and I can see like click on the standard GitHub releases thing and say like, okay, there was a 1.0 release and then 1.2 release. Those are generally like easier to navigate. Like that's GitHub's UI makes that easier to navigate when those are not mixed with multiple different projects or services in the same repo.
Yeah, I just went ahead and I'm sharing the screen, but this is what we have in the release repo. We obviously need to add some things to this, but like this is when I look to see, is our release repo actually using the latest version of the containers? What I'm basically doing is checking this repo out and then looking at these answers.
Yeah, and then I like this is like
yeah.
a separately maintained thing that is like a
Yeah.
currently, I guess, manual, but we can probably automate this a bit more going forward.
So this release piece here, that gets automated automatically. We just have to add to the list. Yeah. Yeah. So this is actually querying each repo when it prints the button. This is a feature that other things have.
Yeah, but this is actually like this is a separate page that is generated not just like automatically by GitHub itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which
it uses
that's
those.
where I've had difficulty in the past, where it's like, you know, if you go into like the standard GitHub releases section, you see like, you know, releases, there's like, you know, release 1.2 of power control and then release 1.2 or like release 1.2 of inventory. That's a bit confusing. Whereas this thing that says like these are actually separate and it's just like listed in a grid, that works well.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, this is the badge is an auto-generated badge from this badgegen.net site. I haven't really looked to see much more about how this works, but that's these are constantly updated. Anyway, does that answer your question, Alexandre?
It does. Thank you.
Okay.
Follow-up question is: do you want? Should we create a repo for the Kia sync layer, because we replaced core SMD with Kia?
I would really love to see that. Yeah.
That's a minimal Python script right now. Do you want a full Golang microservice?
If it's enough for you to do what you need to do, that's useful. So if people want more, they can they can like file issues. I don't know who will use it, but showing that it's that we can replace core DHCP with something else is really valuable to us.
Okay, great. I'll ping you on Slack. And I guess the very last question is more about agentic workflows you mentioned before. As an experiment, I tried to recreate openCHAMI from scratch, taking all your requirements, all the experience, all the discussions, all the wonderful stuff in the project, piping it to Claude, creating a roadmap, and I made like a central monorepo with like Git submodules for each service. And I managed to boot a VM after like 3 days. So it's very tongue-in-cheek. I don't want this to sound disrespectful. And it's more of like, how do you guys see new tools impacting the project and the workflow and everything else?
That's great. Would you be interested in talking about that in May at the Dev Summit?
I would actually. So I briefly mentioned this at the HPSF Dev Community Meeting in Braunschweig.
Yeah.
So I included it at the end of the conference because people were sleepy on the third day, and so I talked a little bit about this. People were interested.
That's great.
But it's yeah, I could mention this.
Yeah, I think this has been one of the great questions and this is one of the things that I wanted to raise in the architectural discussion. So this is a great segue. But the people who are talking about the end of software, because it is so easy to create, like you said, in 3 days, you can replace all of openCHAMI following all of the rules we followed. Is it even worth it to continue to maintain an open source openCHAMI? And of course, my gut says yes, I want to maintain software, but actually, I don't want to maintain software. I want problems solved. Um, and where I have found challenges in the past is when we do that, the first time and then the second time and then the third time and then the fourth time, you lose continuity because you're constantly regenerating. And then it's really hard to build on the success of another piece of software. I've not seen what you're doing. I have no idea what's going on here. But then how the problem doesn't become like AI is doing what we don't want it, like doing it so we don't have to. It's more, how do we share experiences when the underlying software and use cases continue to change? And how do we act as a community when it's too easy to do things like that? So so yeah, I would love to have that conversation. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I'll share the repo I made. You can have a look and play with it. I strongly believe that every center should not start making their own solution.
Mm-hmm.
I think like open source needs to figure out how we do this competently. Also, because the valuable thing now is like the shared. I couldn't have made openCHAMI from scratch without all the work, all the prior work and the discussions, the public discussions. And so I think that has tremendous value. But I think projects that are like what used to take months, i.e., port something from one library to another or refactor, all those things should be delegated to a coding agents with a competent human to verify.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds right to me. And that fits with where Fabrica fits in for me, because it puts so many of the coding standards and so many of the things that we want about how the software operates, not the use cases themselves, but the like API mechanics around them, into a framework that does most of the work for you. So then you can focus on the use cases themselves, and you achieve a sense of continuity from one service to the next. So I don't really care if boot service gets regenerated over and over again. I've defined the boundaries around it and the use cases and the mechanics externally, and so I can let the AI have a little bit more freedom. That's my hypothesis, and I would love to run through that with you and the rest of the community.
Yeah, I would say this and strong testing, stringent testing, unit testing, and then integration testing, and yeah, any test you can imagine. I think if you have that, then you're able to produce quality code, somewhat quality code with
Yeah.
agents.
Yeah, I don't think it's the end of, like I said, not the end of open source in a way, but I think you still want to build a foundation that people can build from.
Right.
And maybe that's where our focus is in defining those boundaries. Hey, this is what this stuff should be. If people want to do different implementations, take it with take your Claude or your Windsurf or whatever and go make your own implementation. That's great. But as Alexander said, couldn't have done it without the discussions and things that already existed. So maybe it's a foundational piece, and maybe we just do it faster. It doesn't have to happen in over a few years. It happens over a few months. We move on to the next project.
Right. And as always, the most important part is the friends we made along the way.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's me on the skeptic side of like, it's like, yes, I hear all this wonderful stuff about, how we're no longer going to have to do any work. But to this point and to this day, I'm still kind of like employed in my day job and like being paid to like, interact with people and inform people like what's going on and like, have those sort of interactions. So I think we're probably a good like decade out before I'm like totally replacing all the human workflows, and speculation about what may come is good, but like to that point, until that point, we still have to like do a lot of the human synchronization of like, hey, we've tried out this thing as an actual human and like tried to run, this particular thing, and maybe you've tried to do it with an agent, and we've documented how we've done it with an agent for those other humans to see how that's been done. But that still needs to happen quite a lot for the present now.
Yeah. Cool. So I think maybe I will add to the May Dev Summit um, like agentic workflows, and we can talk about both MCP style, GitOps style. How do we want to leverage AI to build stuff, and see how many talks we want to throw into there. Do you want to help me? Would you be interested in co-chairing that as a section of the May Dev Summit?
Me?
Yeah, you, Alex.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay. I
I'll
will
be in
add you.
Bristol. I'll be at the Dev Summit in May, I think.
Okay. Have you already registered?
I think I have.
Okay. We've only seen 10 registrations, but none of the organizers had registered yet. So we think that there's a bunch of folks out there who have hesitated to register. Um, we know there's a lot of interest. So this is part of the reason we'll be sending out pushes. And if you think you might go, but you aren't sure, go ahead and register. It gives us a sense of the interest. And then if we need to like follow up, we'll do so.
Okay, I'll push Thomas register. I think he was able to attend one day.
Okay. All right. Um, those were the things. I guess I'll mention the Fabrica stuff. There hasn't been a really good place to put this, but we are working on replacing most of the microservices that we've inherited from HPE with Fabrica equivalents. The metadata service and the boot service are already working. We're running through a lot more tests now to make those work better. And we're finding that then integrating security is so much easier. What I am working on with my coding agents right now is making sure that security is baked in at all levels across all of the microservices, so that like if you enable authentication and authorization, which are both flags, you get actual JOT processing everywhere. The other thing that I'm working on is to bring TPM enrollment into openCHAMI without Keylime. We had looked at Keylime as like this big platform that does TPM management, but because it does constant timings and a bunch of other things, like it's very intrusive. And there's there's a bunch of agents that have to run in a bunch of different places. It's more than we need. All we really need is the ability to send a TPM a nonce and get back a nonce and a token and get back a response to verify that this TPM is actually involved. So I think we'll probably build that as a very, very slim thing that can run either in an initRD or early in boot, so that if we want TPM activation before we run the WireGuard tunnel or before we run like secret delivery, we can do that. So those are the things I'm working on with Fabrica. Those are the things I'm working on. Fabrica has made that a lot easier because I'm not worrying about the mechanics of APIs to the degree that I was. And thus far, everything is backwards compatible with existing tools. So if you're already using a CLI that understands the old BSS or that understands how to run like the old CloudInit, like all of that stuff will still work. Um, the newer stuff, which will be obviously in different containers, all of the new stuff is optional. But things like doing validation of CloudInit on upload rather than waiting to see it fail when it gets deployed to a node is like a big deal, and being able to do versioning. So maybe I have now updated the CloudInit for this particular group 4 times, but I want to go back to the first one. I don't have to still have that YAML sitting around someplace. I can say, go back to the first one. Those kinds of things were hard with the original implementations because of the way they were structured. but with the updated implementations, those things become easy. And I think that that's been one of the big benefits of exploring using Fabrica rather than trying to modify the existing code. So if folks have questions, I mean, I guess we should probably do an RFD around this, but I think everything we're doing is currently optional for folks who want to just stick with what we've got with what's working. So I don't really know what to put in here. Like we aren't necessarily making a breaking change anywhere unless you want to opt into some new complexity. All right. Throw it open to the floor. Anything else that needs to be on our list?
I did get an update through the chat, but from LF Events that all the openCHAMI talks will be recorded at HPSFCon.
Okay.
Also, this call is being recorded. Do you put these on YouTube? Or what do you do with these recordings?
Um,
Or what do you want to do with
currently,
these recordings?
currently nothing.
Okay.
It is being recorded, and we have an intention of getting them posted someplace, but we've never connected the dots. Frankly, from my Lano computer, I'm not allowed to do that. So,
Okay.
so I have to remember to go and log in from a personal computer in order to do it.
Well, I'm allowed to do that. Do you want to start recording TSC meetings and putting them on YouTube and the openCHAMI channel?
I think that would be great. I don't know. Any objections?
No, I think that's great.
Cool.
Were we getting like written summaries of these at all from Yogi, or is that another meeting that I was thinking of?
We were. Yogi was helping out. Yogi moved to Google, and I don't know if he's going to
Oh,
continue.
that would explain that. Okay.
Yeah. He said he was going to try to continue to collaborate, but I don't know if that's. I don't. I think
Yeah.
settling in at Google has been drinking from the fire hose. So I don't know.
Unless Google suddenly becomes an openCHAMI partner, and I don't see any reason that they would. I would not expect that immediately.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So like having those is like, I love to have like, written summaries or like written briefs, because like me personally, I'd never want to sit through like an entire YouTube video of people talking, even if it's like sped up at like 2 times speed. But if we lost the person that was producing those, then I understand that we don't have that available readily anymore.
Well, I think that Zoom has the AI summarizer, so hopefully
It does, and
hopefully that's good enough.
I've never loved it, but
It's okay.
For what Zoom produces, like the raw transcripts, so those are great, and I can read through those faster than usually watch a YouTube video. The actual like summary of it is kind of like iffy because I've not gotten a lot of use out of the summaries usually.
Yeah. Sometimes those summaries are awesome. Like John provided insight.
Yeah.
Oh, about what?
Yeah, like I can skip around, like I can read through I don't know, whatever. Like my reading speed is faster than most people's. I would think I can will just grant that. But like I can skip around a transcript and say like, okay, where can I find like a discussion that I'm interested in? Just skip through that briefly and like read that subsection of it. Great, I can do that. And I can get the exact words that were said, and that's pretty much what I want. The summaries of like these are the high level bullet points. I can understand that that's maybe useful for like people that are working in like senior management, and they need to have summaries of like 15 different meetings. But I'm usually not those people. I have like a few meetings that I pay attention to, and those meetings I want to pay attention to the details of them.
All right. Anything else? All right. Anyone? So we now have the I guess one other sort of minor issue. We've got the agenda in a continuing Google Doc. I've heard that people have trouble with Google Docs. It for the longest time that was the only thing that everyone could really reliably use. Hand up if you need it not to be a Google Doc. Okay, Jay.
I mean, I can use my personal laptop to read it, but yeah, HPE has locked down all Google Docs.
It took some magic for me to get it at Dell, but I have it.
All right.
Even external ones?
Yeah.
Fascinating.
Awesome. All right.
My sympathies go out to you.
So I tell you what, Jay and John, can I ask the two of you to propose a location that we might all be able to use and collaborate on for putting together the agendas? GitHub,
GitHub.
something. Just if you can propose, like we can use the GitHub TSC area for this, if needed. But
GitHub or Slack would be the,
all right.
Yeah,
Then I guess
GitHub's
we
an
should
easy
put
one.
this to GitHub.
Okay. Yeah, we can work on that.
All right. All right. So be in touch. You can be in touch with me and or Tom and or Chris if there are agenda items that you would like to be adding. And as always, I'm available on Slack all the time. So let me know if there's anything you guys need or want to plan for.
Yeah.
All right.
Excellent. See you online.
Thanks for
See you all
attending.
in Chicago too.
Yep.
Yeah, see you in
Yeah,
Chicago.
we'll do it.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.